I need people to feel what I'm feeling right now. And, it's like Kemi always said, that kind of really famous line, and I think it's really true. Never underestimate what a crowd can handle. And that's the one thing I've realised over the years. I am speaking to you, not in your own language, but in the language of my music, in my set while I'm doing it. We're having a conversation. It doesn't matter whether you're in Japan, Brazil, here, there. People, when you play a tune, people are saying to each other, tune, I'm here to entertain you, and if we're not dancing, what's the point? You know what I mean? Even if we've got a little bit of beef with each other, when we're abroad, we are united. You know what I mean? Or when we're together somewhere, we are united. We're on each other's side. And I do think drum and bass has always been like that.
One more thing.
Hello and welcome to an incredibly special episode of the One More Thing podcast, a series of interviews with truly inspiring artists within bass music, sound system and breakbeat culture. I'm Dave Columbo Jenkins, and recently I made the journey to Kettering to spend some time with a true pioneer and utterly dedicated selector, DJ Storm. She's currently celebrating 30 years at the forefront of jungle drum and bass, and she is every bit as inspired, passionate and fastidiously knowledgeable about the music and craft as she was when she and Kemistry began their mission on pirate radio in 1992. Following her 30 years takeovers at Outlook Festival earlier this year, on December the 23rd, she will be wrapping up 2022 by hosting a room at longstanding London rave Alchemy at E1 with some of her nearest, dearest and most inspiring friends and peers from across the scene. I got some quotes and stories from some of her lineup to read to her during this interview. Massive shouts to Marc Mac, Fabio Grooverider, Loxy and J Majik for taking the time to contribute on this wonderful and insightful and ultimately timeless conversation. The biggest shouts, of course, are to Jayne Storm herself for this super candid and engaging conversation, and to you for listening. So please get comfortable and allow yourself to be a fly on the wall as Storm rolls out for some pure history over the next hour and 50 minutes. Enjoy. Storm, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. How are you, first of all?
I'm very good. A little bit chilly today, but I'm good.
Yeah, we are. We're in the winter now. So we're going to celebrate. We're going to look back over 30 years of DJ Storm.
All I can think right now is, where's the time gone?
Yeah, I was going to say, does it feel like 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't actually. And I think that most probably tells you it's been bumper packed. You know what I mean? And I've had a great time. And let's be honest, what other job would you do in the world where you travel to so many places that you would never go? The remotest place in Germany, the oddest place in Estonia. Do you know what I mean? Those little places that maybe you'd never seen in your life or ever thought to go. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Yeah,
completely off the beaten track, really. You get to see the real world and not just the tourist kind of side of things.
Absolutely, because you're there with someone who knows it, and if you get time to see it, they're going to show you all the good things rather than just the tourist things. Maybe you'll see a little bit more of an interesting slant on a city.
Oh, massively. And in your position as well, you were one of the first to take the sound to a lot of these places as well,
Yeah, sure. I think, most probably Grooverider did everything first, right? Yeah. He went and paved the way for us all.
Right, so I want to start off with a quote. So I've got a few quotes to kind of drop on you throughout the interview, really, and they're all from DJs that you've curated for your forthcoming 30 years to DJ Storm. And this one just really, really struck a chord with me. It's from Marc Mac, which conjures such an awesome mental image. So here we go. He said, it's around 1992, 1993. I was still living at home with parents, as most of us were around that time. Gus from Reinforced had met Goldie in Kentish Town, and he was excited about these two DJs, Kemi and Storm. He told us to listen out for them on pirate radio. Being in Wembley, I was too far out to tune in, so I made some crazy contraption of an aerial with coat hangers and electrical mains cables. I was stood on the living room table to get more height to catch the signal.
That's crazy.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And anyway, I managed to catch some of the Fuzzy Show on a cassette. It was wicked. I remember them hearing playing Dread So Special and a piano drop in the mix. That show was definitely an influence on my Mannix productions. Yeah, so I met them both the week after, and from a label perspective, we were more than happy to support Kemi and Storm with music and proud to have them as part of the team. They were our secret weapon. I believe the only music production the two did was for Enforcers on Reinforced, and that really was a moment for us and a significant statement for the label. After the sad, tragic passing of Kemi, Jayne continued to cut through the noise of thousands of DJs and inspired many girl and women DJs to take a place in this scene. So that's from Marc Mac, and that's like just besides
That's
the
really
mental
touched my
image,
heart.
it's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, Mark, thank you. I never knew he did that. Brilliant.
Yeah, just imagining like a young Marc Mac standing on a table with an electric mains cable as well, like dicing with death to hear your
dicing
set.
with death. That's what I have to call it now, dicing with death, Marc Mac. Well, that's a really incredible quote, and I have to say that we felt such an inclusion with Reinforce. And I've said this to Digo and Mark, what was it, and Digo will always say, well, we all grew up like with sisters and brothers, and you were just part of that whole thing. And I think we did feel that sister brotherly love, and they really believed in us. They saw something in us that maybe others didn't. And I mean, even Defection FM, big up all Defection FM, Stitch, Miley, Chunks, Shabba, Bookie Ranks, all of you. We had such a fantastic time there, and I think we did create a little vibe for ourselves at Defection FM, and we got the Laser Drone gig from that. Obviously Randall had recommended us, and that was another thing. Randall obviously was, involved with Reinforced, and he'd given, a little nod, and I mean, even if you read his kind of interviews at that time, he talks about Kemistry and Storm. So, I think we were around. I think you've got to say, to a certain extent, is it that you're in the right place at the right time? Or is it that you have some luck? And I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah. And I think for me and Kemi, I mean, even Goldie happening to be cycling in Camden that day and seeing Kemi in the shop. Are we all in the right place at the right time? Maybe, maybe we were meant to be part of these people. And I think they showed us that we could be brave in the mix, me and Kemi. Yeah. And I think with their productions, you had to be brave. And then I think, because obviously we cut a lot of their dub plates, people were like, who are these girls with all these Reinforced dub plates? So that actually got us noticed, you know what I mean? And people wondering who we were, because you've got to remember, me, Kemi and Goldie were outsiders from London. Yeah. We're from Kettering, me and Kemi. Goldie had come back from Miami. He'd been living there maybe 7 or 8 years. He'd come back with his kind of graffiti show. He'd done the bombing film. So, it was kind of like, I think Goldie was of that mindset that, Goldie was always like, we'd say, oh no, you don't do it like that in drum and bass. Why not? Well, why can't I? He was that rebel. And I think, to a certain extent, Reinforced with that kind of punk element with their sound. There was no limits to what kind of sound they would make or where they would gain from. And I think the fact of their histories, you could hear that in their music, with the kind of lyric element and the kind of what became jungle element, you know what I mean? And they had it all. And I think for us, it was somewhere where we felt really comfortable, that these people, wow, they really believe in us, and let's go and do our best job for them. And, they're incredible people and so talented. And, I think they paved a way for a lot of drum and bass and for how people wanted to make stuff. And when I hear Sherelle now playing a lot of their stuff, you know what I mean? It's, it stands the test of time. In fact, to a certain extent, and Goldie said this a few times, maybe Reinforced are way ahead of their time to a certain extent. Yeah. They're responsible for everything that's like kind of ground zero, really, in a way. And that's why the quote from Mark really resonated. Thank you, Mark.
Because, it wasn't, they wrote the blueprints, but those blueprints were inspired by your really early mixes,
Amazing. That's crazy. Yeah.
I want to kind of dwell in that moment, really, because, you'd come from a really academic background, hadn't you? Yeah. You were, in another world, in a parallel universe, you were going to be a radiographer. You were a radiographer. You were a working radiographer. Yeah. You'd studied in Oxford and everything, hadn't you? Yeah. I loved that job. From an early age, I always knew I wanted to do something medical. And it was always to do with cancer. And obviously, when I was kind of here at school, I was at the school at the top of the road here. Wow. But that's a new school now, but I just literally had to walk up the hill. But I was that first year where there was no 11 plus. So you were put in the local school, and this was not an 11 plus school. So they couldn't maybe kind of deal with some of the people that were academic. And in my last year, I just lost my way and I gave up.
So I had to resit my O-levels along with my A-levels, and at that point there I decided that, you know, I wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to treat cancer and be an oncologist. But I thought to myself, I actually almost want to enjoy life too, because I was meeting different people at college and, you know, experiencing different things. And I'd obviously met my partner David, who was in the band, same band as Kemi's boyfriend.
Right.
So I was starting to meet people now who were and I was always interested in music. I'm a vinyl collector. My mum and dad were vinyl collectors. So we always had music in the house, and we always had record players. And, you know, I had one of those record players that you could stack about 10, you know. Like,
go on.
Oh, here, and, you know, and obviously then when we came to tapes, we used to take the Radio 1 countdown and try, you know, and they always say, try and flip it over before you know, they said anything. Do you know what I mean? You know, so I was always into music, and my niece from here, she was into music as well. And obviously I became part of I did dancing from an early age, and that has music, you know, very much interpretation of music with your body, you know. So and I was on the road doing competitions, and then I became an Irish dancer, and I was on the road again doing competitions with my mum.
How far did you take that?
Yeah, well, you know, I did kind of, my dad was Irish and my mum was English, but actually I really enjoyed the dancing, and I loved being on the road with my mum. And then I kind of became part of an Irish dance march band when I learned to play the accordion when I was 8, the piano accordion.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, and again, me and my mum were on the road, and I look back at it now and think maybe I was always destined to be on the road without even realising it.
I was going to say you were born on road, like
a little bit, yeah. I mean, you know, me and my mum, we'd go off with the map book, and Dad would do his gardening here. He wasn't that bothered, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so yeah, and I really enjoyed it because it gave me a good sense of music. And then the band finished, and then I started to get trained by a classical Mr. Warren, he was called, and he was a world champion classical. He'd won the world championships a few times when he was younger. So now I started learning music, and then I did my kind of music exams up to grade 5.
Wow.
So then obviously I came to college, and then I decided, okay, I don't want to be a doctor because it's a long time, and I'm kind of liking life, and I'm liking, me and my niece would go to the nightclub here, Mr. Bips it was called, Kettering people, remember Mr. Bips? So anyway, we used to go there. I mean, we used to go in there when we were 16, and it was like 18, I think, but there was no ID back in the day. If you looked old enough, you kind of got in.
Yeah.
And I started getting into disco music, which was my real thing. Then, of course, I decided, okay, I still want to do something with cancer, but what's not so long and, you know, just going to take over my life. Because
not
I knew,
such a commitment.
Well, I could realise now with education that being a doctor was, wow, really a long education, and maybe a real, as much as I had a vocation, I felt I had a calling, I didn't feel I had that intense in calling. I felt.
What was it about cancer then that drew you to that?
I have got no idea.
Wow.
I have got no idea, but I was always interested in it, and even at school I used to go and do little research in the library, and I was obviously into anatomy and physiology. I loved biology, and I loved chemistry, and I loved physics. You know what I mean? But physics for me was frustrating because you only get taught it to a certain point at O level, and I was always like, but why is Hooke's law like that? Well, they were like, if you do the A level, you'll get, I can't understand it. But of course, when I saw radiography now, I was like, okay, therapy radiography, treating cancer patients, that's what I want to do. So I'd found it, and I mean, I really enjoyed my time in Oxford. But again, you know, I'd met my little friend Nikki, who became the third wheel of Kemistry and Storm, and we were again going out partying, going to discos, and first time we saw this DJ, and we were like, hang on a minute, these two tunes are going together, and all he had was a phone, right? And he was doing something with the phone, and he gave us a few tapes, and maybe that triggered something in me, you know, to kind of, that's where I'm going to go at some point. But I really enjoyed the fact that he was making something together with these tunes, you know, and I used to play these tapes over and over again. And then obviously we moved on and we came to London, and it took me an extra year to qualify because I couldn't get my head round, as much as I love physics, I couldn't be taught nuclear physics by a physicist, so I just couldn't understand him for a year. So I had to go back and resit and have another teacher teach me, because I mean,
it was too much.
Yeah, maybe it was too much for me, and I wasn't quite getting it. But I mean, once I'd, you know, got all through the theory of E equals mc squared, which is a theory I truly love. I love Einstein, because most of his stuff is related to what I did, you know, the acceleration of electrons and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I spent an extra year. Then I came to London. It was weird that Kemi had moved to London maybe about a month before I qualified.
Oh, wow.
So she'd come down from Sheffield. She'd been in Sheffield for 4 years. And
Had you kept in touch during that time?
Yes.
You did?
We wrote letters and we called each other. We were still, me and Kemi loved the letter writing thing. I've still got all her letters.
Oh, wow.
So
beautiful.
And I found her letters from me, since she passed away. So she's still got all her letters from me. So yes, we kept up our relationship, and me and David, her and her partner didn't drive, so we used to drive up to Sheffield, and they were kind of in a really cool party group of people. He was kind of a graphic designer, so he was coming from the artistic point of things, and Kemi learned to become a makeup artist there. So
and this is when Sheffield, this is probably the peak era of Bleep, or was it a little bit prior?
Well, she was
Bleep,
totally into
really?
Cabaret Voltaire, right? That was the big thing, right? That had come out of Sheffield at that point. And her friends of friends, the first time we went up there, we were at a party where Martin Fry was.
Wow.
You know what I mean? No, we were talking to they were kind of into the kind of old arts thing up there. And then Kemi worked for Fon Records, which was Jarvis Cocker's label.
Yeah.
So she worked there for a little bit, and then she got a place in London, and she wanted to come to London and be a makeup artist. And she thought, she'd be really accepted. She looks funky, how many pictures did you see of her in ID just in Camden? People are like, oh, can I take a picture of you? Because she looked so different, right? At that point, she looked very different. Not many young girls had blonde dreadlocks. And so she had a definite style, Kemi. But of course, she found it really difficult. They didn't want to know her. They thought she was a bit weird looking. And the only kind of job she got was when she actually wore my radiography suit that I'd go for interviews and put all her hair up in a turban. So, right, so even then she was...
Is that because it was just so cliquey and just being outsiders?
Who knows? But you sense a certain amount of racism. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and she sensed it too. It's not like she was new to it. You know what I mean? She had a difficult time growing up here. It's very Middle England here in Kettering. And yeah, she did get bullied, a lot. And she met this fantastic girl, Pippa, and they became like soulmates, you know what I mean, and had a great time because she wanted to go to school, and she loved education, you know what I mean. Kemi loved words, and I love numbers, so that really worked for us. At Metalheadz, I would do all the logistics of the numbers and when we're going to release, and Kemi would write all the stuff for it and all the blumph, and then she bought a thesaurus because she wanted every release to have a word related to metal in it or a head,
attention to detail.
They were all handwritten, and then we, so yeah, and she moved. Like I say, I was doing work experience. Then I got a job at the Westminster Hospital, and she said, why don't you just, we're living in this huge Victorian house. She had a massive bedroom, so we just got like 2 single beds and shared the rent. And then she told me, I've been doing this thing called raving, and I was like, I've heard bad things about that. She was like, no, it's really good. It's about this new music. And even though I was into Japan, who kind of now had electronic drums, I was okay with that. A few electronic keyboards, I was like, I'm not sure about, electronic music and, that kind of stuff. And even though I was into disco, and so she used to bombard me with the pirate radio, and slowly, she broke my shell. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, her and the Red or Dead people, they were a big raving crew.
You were their driver for a little while.
I was their driver for a bit. Me and Nikki would, take care of them overnight. get them home, get them out, get them home, and yeah, I suppose me and Nikki just got, again infected by the music and realised what a lovely scene this was. People were just having a really nice time. You know what I mean? We obviously were aware of things. I mean, I'd done a little bit of studying in Oxford with this psychologist into MDMA. And the dangers and the pros and cons of it.
So that was super early on then, really.
Yeah. And I mean, when I was at the Westminster, they were trialling this smart drug, which is kind of like most probably a little bit of a kind of most probably early CBD.
Wow.
Kind of vibe. They wanted to use it for a pre-med rather than something chemical, just so that it would relax you. And they asked a few of us to test it, kind of when we were out walking, and, and it was just really nice. And in the end, they turned it into a smart drug, and it stopped kind of people who were having radiation sickness being sick. And if they were sick, it made them feel much better about it.
Wow, so that's fascinating.
It was kind of a little bit the way MDMA worked. It was like a serotonin releaser. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it was interesting that I had a bit of information, do you know what I mean, about what was going on out there. But yeah, I mean, we started again buying vinyl, and we were like, why are we buying all this vinyl? And we've got no decks to play it on, and obviously then we moved into another flat, and Nikki got a little mini disc kind of thing, and you had a little platter, and Kemi had an Amstrad kind of thing. And obviously when we met Goldie, when we'd come back from Rage, Goldie and Kemi would drag the Amstrad into Nicky's room, and we would play all the vinyl that we'd got, and all we could do was play it and rewind it. We couldn't mix it. We had no mixer. We just had 2 decks, you know what I mean? But we had a great time, you know what I mean? So I suppose that was the early part of us realising something's up here, you know, and I think obviously...
What I love about this part of the story is that you developed a deck fund, didn't you? And then I think you got a better job in a private hospital, and the way that you and Kemi, and all of you as well, Goldie included in the community...
Goldie bought us our first decks.
Yeah, all of you kind of funding each other. Whoever had the money at the time, whoever had come into a little bit of money, shared it all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd become an agency radiographer about 8 months after I'd qualified. And the reason of that was that I wanted to do the job, but I didn't want any of the politics of the NHS.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I just felt I was better, like, you know, just getting on with my work. And I kind of really enjoyed the challenge of different techniques, different machines in different departments. That kept me fresh, you know what I mean? Because, you know, agency radiographers are very frowned upon because they're always tend to be lazy. But I wanted to make sure I loved the job. Do you know what I mean? I really loved the job. There was nothing wrong with that job, but I found something I loved more, I suppose. You know what I mean? And, you know, and I think that was my last job in London, and then I had to go back a few times when we were a bit broke. I worked in Romford for a bit, and then I went back and worked in Kent and Canterbury for a bit. So I went in and out, even though, because, you know...
So it's not that kind of fairy tale story then where you worked and you invested your money and then, you know, things kicked off for you and Kemi and it was all happily ever after.
It takes time, right, to get to that point where you can actually go, right, I'm giving up my day job. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, Kemi still carried on working at Red or Dead. So, you know, she was bringing her own money in as well. So, you know, we carried on kind of doing what we'd got to do until we got to that point. But for me and Kemi, and I think that's what women tend to do, and I'm sure guys do it as well, but we realised that being women in a very male-dominated scene, that we would most probably have to work 2 or 3, maybe 4 steps ahead of everybody else. So until we could see that point in our future where I could actually go, right, I'm not going back to radiography, you know what I mean? But I always had that option, and I think that was always I'm so glad I did it that way round, because I think it gave me and Kemi that little bit of more maturity when we became DJs. You know, she'd had a career, I'd had a career, and I know everybody now does it, you know, straight from the word dot, and that's brilliant. But I think that way around we had a little bit more experience of life.
Anybody who's had to work and do other jobs, regular jobs, then you understand where the people on the dance floor are coming from. I think.
Yeah, I think it gave me a certain amount of discipline as well.
Yeah.
And so when Goldie asked us if we could run the label, we just went, oh, okay. And then he went, and we were like, how do we run a label? And Kemi's like, well, you know how to run a diary, right, from your job. And so we could do, like, you know, a diary of when we're going to release things and how we're going to... I can write things. And we were like, yeah, we can do it, you know, with a lot of phone calls to reinforce, trust me, to Gus. And, Gus, we've got a bit of a problem. And, you know, that's, again, you know, that's why I love this scene. If you wanted some help, you could just ask someone.
Yeah.
Right? Because they most probably knew it better than you. What do we know? We've said yes to Goldie. Okay, we're going to run your label, but do we know how to do it? Well, we'll get advice. That's what we do, you know, and we're educated women, you know what I mean? We can work it out, you know, certain things. But yeah, Gus got a lot of phone calls from Reinforce. And others. I think Brian helped a lot as well. Brian G, you know, gave us good advice, you know what I mean, if we needed it. And, you know, we had Rob Layford doing Moving Shadow. So there were always people to ask advice. Wow. And I felt that the scene...
Advice from like 3 of the most successful and iconic label owners.
Sure. But you know, I think that's the one thing I'd learned from being a radiographer, and most probably growing up in that department in Oxford. I have to give them props because it was always very open. And I think because we felt this brother-sister thing with Reinforce, which was a real feeling for sure, I don't think we thought it was a problem asking someone. Yeah. You know, and if I saw someone down at Music House, it was normally down at Music House, and I'd be like, oh, do you know how you do this? Or, you know, do you know how to do that? And obviously Christian came on board from Goldie's side to kind of, and he obviously put out Synthetic 001, which was the Terminator release. So he was working for John Truelove, a record label, and so he knew what he was doing, and I think that's why most probably Metalheadz in the beginning was pretty legitimate. And you know, MCPS, PPL, all the things that you needed to do. Christian would do the contracts, and me and Kemi would literally do the looking after the guys. How do we work this? What are we doing? Who's got a release? When do we put it out? That kind of vibe.
Being the voice and the character of the label, really, the energy and the soul of the label.
And I think because then we were going going on the road, then we were able to take, we're all taking vinyl and our dub plates, right? So we were able to take promos out with us, find the person in that area, what DJs do we know in this area, who can you tell us to send to? Jeff in New Zealand, we'd send him a package and he would help us. Jeff Samurai, big up. And he would help us out there. And same with Canberra in Japan, we'd take loads over to him. We'd say, right, okay, who do you give them to the DJs that you know? So now we were networking live, and I think that was the beauty of like the way we ran the label. We were on the ground with it, you know what I mean? And because there was two of us, one of us was always fair game to come and ask questions to. And we didn't mind. We were very open. We wanted to promote this label. We wanted to get out there. We believed in it. When, in the beginning, people were like, Metalheadz, there's some weird label, some stuff going on there, you know what I mean? And we were like, come on, believe in it. I mean, it's brilliant. Don't be shy of it, you know what I mean? And I think we got the same thing with Blue Note. What's going on down there, the devil music and devil worship. I know, really, it's just like really interesting drum and bass, you know what I mean? But I think Speed was that kind of game changer as to, a newer club
that kind
that
of crossover between jungle and drum and bass.
Yeah, really. It had a perfect combination, and I think it was needed at that time, because I can remember Brian saying to me and Kemi, hang on a minute, what's going on here? We were all playing in one room before, right? Now they were separating us into room 1, which was jungle, and drum and bass, which was nearly always Brian and me and Kemi and Fabio, you know what I mean? And we were like, what's going on here? So I think Speed was born out of that, because certain DJs weren't being booked on the main floor anymore. And I can remember the way we were helping out with the guest list of Speed. We came up with this idea of like a £2 guest list, and that we would, all the people, who would come, Photex, or that they would, and cover our costs. If we could get like 150 people paying £2, that's how much it was for Sarah to hire Speed, or it was Leo in the beginning. So we were like, okay, let's do that. And I literally found loads of people's numbers and said, hi, is this Photex? This is Jayne, DJ Storm, and we're doing this club called Speed. That's how I met him. And then he brought Source Direct down, and then I met Digital, and so I even met Marcus Intellects down there for the first time. Wow. So we called Marcus and said, there's this great club that they're playing your music on the main floor, do you know what I mean? So that's the way we kind of started to work Speed, and then it took off, and it was a game changer, that club, you know what I mean? Because it was in a small venue, and you had a really good set of DJs kind of playing, and people would come out really early, and I think that did a lot for Kemistry and Storm's career, you know what I mean? Doc Scott, I think, was already known, and Lee was most probably kind of in the same boat as us, because they were the warm-ups, Kemistry and Storm, Doc Scott and Lee. And as time went on, I know Ink got to play in there, and a few other people did open up a little bit towards the end, but it was very kind of strict, you know what I mean? And
so this was almost like the kind of precursor, then the starter course for Blue Note, really, in a way,
definitely.
Like, and that creation of a community, being midweek, so a lot of people could come down. Most of the crowd would be industry as well, wouldn't they, or artists themselves.
And it finished, early. It wasn't like a late thing, you know what I mean? And that worked. And I think when obviously Goldie got offered the Sunday, that was mine and Kemi's MO raving. It's like we said to Goldie, we go to Rage on a Thursday. I mean, without Grooverider and Fabio, we were so lucky to have discovered that, and because our friends were saying, there was these DJs, they came from upstairs to downstairs, and they were so good, they got the girls to take their tops off, and we were like, huh? And the guys were like, let's go, you know what I mean? So we all obviously went down there. The first night you had to get membership, everybody had to be a member, so we only got to hear like about an hour of Grooverider, but even from that hour,
that was your schooling, really, wasn't it? Rage wasn't. I've got a quote from Fabio and Grooverider as well. So they said, we first met DJ Storm at Rage 3 decades ago alongside DJ Kemistry. She's been around for many years pushing new music and representing D&B in its purest form. It's always a pleasure playing for her. She always curates good lineups that push boundaries, and it's an honour to play for her. Thank you for the last 30 years, Jayne. Here's to another. So that's, and that's Fabio and Grooverider. They were like, they're again, more blueprint writers there, really.
Absolutely. I mean, the godfathers, you know what I mean, of this scene, and, the music that they had. I mean, I can remember Fabio playing a tune one night that didn't even really have beats. And we were like, oh, God, he's so, different, you know what I mean? We knew we were getting, like, the latest thing in London, you know what I mean? And then we used to go to Coventry on a Friday because we kind of became friends with the guy from Music Power in Wood Green, Chris, and he was running with Top Buzz.
Right.
So we were like in the next car behind them, do you know what I mean, going to Coventry, and obviously we got to see Doc Scott, and we saw Brian G and Mickey Finn up there. That's the first time I'd heard Brian G, and again Brian G was like, I was like, wow, That's a different set. He's doing something. You know, me and Kemi were like producers of DJing. So, you know, I've always said Grooverider taught you how to select. Fabio taught you how to tell a story and took you on a journey. Randall put the mix into perspective, right? And then Bookham taught me music. Brian and Frosty taught me how to roll. Mickey Finn taught me how to cut up the beat slightly. You know, there's all different things. And I think we were like a little sponge, and we'd take a little bit from even now, when I hear someone doing something interesting, I'm like, all right, I could do that. And sometimes when I play with digital, because he cuts a lot, right? Yeah, and then the next set, after I do hear him, I'm like, yeah, let's do a bit of digital cutting. You know?
Brilliant.
Because I kind of love the impact. You forget about these things now. Do you know what I mean? And but I think from all those people, you know, we became Kemistry and Storm. We took a little piece of something from everybody, you know. And, you know, we all always wanted our set to have so much music, so much rolling, you know, and we'd think about it quite a lot. And again, you know, we kind of used to not do what Bookham did, but Bookham always used to tape his set, and he said, you know, I go home and then I can really listen to it and move stuff around. And, you know, what we used to do was write our sets down when we came back, and then we'd say to ourselves, now, which of those mixes didn't work? And then we go and try, and we would say, yeah, that wasn't quite right, and then you'd move it round.
So you literally write down, like, which one did we play next? Would you keep the records in order then?
I've got 2 books down there right now of sets.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
what?
Yeah, which I found the other day.
Wow, that's jungle history, drum and bass history. They are good. Wow.
Yeah,
amazing
innovation
artifacts.
sets, speed sets, Blue Note sets. Yeah, it's quite mad, that book. And you know, it's not. It's obviously we used to write them down and not most probably remember the artist or the name of the tune. So it's not very comprehensive. I'm like, it's like Dillinger A. But of course I've got the book where I wrote down all my tunes, so I can most probably go back to that month and find out which Dillinger it was. Do you see what I mean? So I've got a cross-reference because...
Have you still got those books as well?
Yeah, I've still got... Well, it's one book. It started... Well, we started in a diary because we didn't have any money, and my mum and dad bought me a diary. So all the kind of, I suppose, the first stuff we started buying in 88, 89, so it would be the house and techno, or maybe acid, that kind of thing. And
so Sterling Boyd and stuff like that.
I wrote down every single mix. You know, you'd get 6 or 7 mixes on it, right? I wrote down every mix and how long they were. I was so anal. So then obviously we've got a bit of money, we've got a book, and that goes from February 1991 to I think halfway through 1997.
Wow.
So, and it's every tune we bought. And we got that from Music Power because they used to have a book of promos. And we were like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's write down everything.
Wow. Amazing. The level of nerdiness.
Yeah,
I love it.
And we loved a bit of pen and paper. And I still love a bit of pen and paper, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's something very different. Like, you know, I'm still a notes guy. I still have a list, you know, and there's something very different to typing something out. I'm writing something down. You seem to go in your brain in a different way.
Well, I think I learned that when I was studying, because if I didn't write it down, it wouldn't go in. And I used to have to write multiple times, and once I'd done it 3 times, it's in, you know. So my studying was a lot of writing, you know what I mean? And I don't think I've ever got over it. I love a bit of pen and paper, to be honest, you know what I mean? And I understand technology is here, but you know, it's like even Goldie buying us the fax machine and, you know, bringing it to Kemi's house, and we were like, oh my god, we're in an office, we've got a fax machine, you know. And it stayed in the pride of place of our room, you know. There were the decks, they were the first, and then the fax machine, you know, it had a little table of its own.
Brilliant.
Really cute. Yeah, so, you know, and I think, you know, again, when I look back at all the people that, it's so fantastic that a lot of us are still here, you know, Mickey Vinn, Ray Keith, all those people that I was on Groove Connection with, you know, are all still here and out there, and you know, that's the beauty of it, still loving it. And I think we're all hopefully embracing the new people, you know what I mean? And you know, and again, like I say, for me, I suppose I'm always going to maintain the art of what I do as a DJ, but there's lots of different sounds that are viable now, you know, and I realise that maybe I don't always like it, you know what I mean, but you know, I think
that's the beauty of it, though, really, in a way, isn't it?
It is,
Having
because
that
lots
variety.
of different styles and lots of different ways of doing things are very viable, and I think I'm still very old school.
Yeah. But what I love, and I've chatted to everybody who've listed about this, is the fact that in drum and bass jungle, the originators, the pioneers, are still active. They're still in demand. You see it a little bit in techno and house, but they, you know, I was saying this to Doc Scott on one of the previous podcasts that I've done, you know, that's another kind of 10 years older again. but there's still like there's no other genre or movement like drum and bass jungle where the pioneers like yourself are still incredibly active.
Well, I mean, Doc
incredibly
Scott
relevant.
was DJing when we weren't even DJing, and we saw him, in Coventry, and it was, oh my God, it's Doc Scott. He was, I mean, he was so young, but he was like a legend, really young, wasn't he, Doc? Because he made such out there music, right? That you could play. I mean, the stuff he did on Absolute 2 was just ridiculous. You know what I mean?
More blueprints, like
absolutely. And he obviously knew his stuff, and yet he's a really young guy. I mean, he was younger than us, quite a few years, and yet to think he's still there now, you know what I mean, and still younger than me, do you know what I mean? And so his career is vast, and I mean, I think Groove was like the trailblazer for a lot of us going out there to different territories. And, wherever you went, they were like, oh, yeah, Groove came first. You know what I mean? Like Switzerland or Italy or, Japan, New Zealand, Australia. Groove was there, do you know what I mean? And paving the way for us all. So it's kind of cool that we've still got these incredible, I suppose, mentors and heroes around us. And I mean, for me and Kemi, Randall was most probably our biggest mentor because we actually got to know him and be friends. We met Groove and Fabio, but we didn't get to know them till a little bit later, and I think Randall was really instrumental in kind of helping our career, and I'd never forget that. And
even down to telling you to remove the rubber mat off the decks.
Right. Yeah, you've heard that story, people, and it's still one that I am embarrassed about, okay? The fact that the decks were going we're like, oh, they make a really odd sound.
But that's brilliant. I mean, because he had the underground crew, wasn't it?
And they were great.
So
you
had all
Flex,
of these people
Fats,
kind of
Mikey,
taking you under their wing in that type of way.
Yeah, absolutely,
really.
absolutely. And it was nice to meet those different. It was almost like you were meeting different families, and then you'd all come together at Music House. You know what I mean? And I mean, Leon, rest in peace, bless you. One of the most beautiful souls I've met in this world, and totally gone too soon. But if we didn't have Music House, Chris, Paul, all of you down there, Mr. Chemical Brother, as Randall used to call you in the background there, if we didn't have you, we wouldn't have made all these connections. We wouldn't have had a little Music House was like a home to us, where we could just go for mostly a spliff, you know what I mean? And whatever we were carrying, do you know what I mean? But, it was just fantastic. I'd meet all kinds of people, and sometimes it would take me ages to I'd think, oh, is that so-and-so? And, you know what I mean? I think it took me longest to say hello to Shy FX, because my whole mind was like, is he called Shy FX because he's really shy? Does he not want to be bothered? I don't know anybody in here who's talking to him. So it took me about an hour. I went, hello, are you Shy FX? It was really nice. But, sometimes I found it, again, you're not from here, and you made your own connections. And that's what I really loved about Music House, that you made your own connections. And I suppose once we started to be faces out there and people started to get to know us, they were able to just go, oh, hi, you Storm, and but when we were first unknown, it was almost like we couldn't work out who was who, we didn't want to embarrass ourselves and say hi to Jumping Jack Frost when it was Brian G, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying though?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was no internet and stuff like that, unless you were on the same lineup as someone, then you knew what they looked like, but otherwise all of these names were just myths, really.
Exactly.
And even down to both of you, nobody knew you purposefully picked names to make sure that people didn't know that you were females.
It took us a while because Goldie wrote us a CV, and it took us a while to put on that CV that we were female DJs. I think it took about 3 years for us to put. Yeah, because we thought, let's just go out there and, is it different? We don't know, because what do we know? We know Tamsin, she's lovely. We were aware of DJ Rap, we didn't know her, but she was kind of a hero to us, you know what I mean? We'd seen her, get through this, oh gosh, one of the hottest raves I think I've ever been to in Coventry, and it was so hot their vinyl was melting, so they all had to now play back to back because you couldn't stay on long, and we were like, oh my god, look at Rap just dealing with it, we were so proud of her amongst all these guys, you know what I mean? And she was doing her bit, and we were like, okay. And our whole theory was, it must be hard for her as one woman alone, but if she can do it on her own, two of us, it's going to be easier, right? And I think it was. I think Kemistry and Storm were in their own little bubble a little bit. I think we didn't get involved in everything that was going on there, but I think that was cool. I think people didn't mind that about us, because it took us a time to get integrated, I suppose, into the scene. But all we felt was love and friendliness, to be quite honest, and I think that's how you approach it, and I mean, I can remember, coming downstairs from Laserdrome, and because they couldn't see you as DJs, right? You'd go up the stairs at Laserdrome and
you were right up there,
you were
weren't
right
you?
up there, and you could see everything. But it was a bit like Rage, you know. I never knew what Groove and Fabio looked like for years until I finally met them. You know what I mean? Because they were an enigma to us, you know what I mean? And you didn't really see them, and there was no MCs, and it was just pure, very pure heaven. Do you know what I mean? And the sound system and the lights. I mean, they worked hard on that club to give you a visual kind of mind-body experience, you know what I mean? It was on many levels Rage, and I think that's, and again with Coventry, it was kind of that same bass spins on the floor, mids and tops flying from the balcony. It was like a small Rage, Coventry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got this kind of like incredible feeling of everything, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, if you think that if drum and bass came today with the systems we've got, compression, compressed speakers, it wouldn't survive. But because we could move sound then, you know, and really move sound and have big speakers, you know,
proper sound system culture.
Productions weren't great, you know, and people were learning, but
Yeah.
you were able to do something with it, you know what I mean? Whereas now, it most probably would never have survived, you know?
Wow, that's a really interesting point, and that rooted back to proper sound system culture.
Well,
there,
yeah,
really,
we came
doesn't
out
it?
of sound system culture, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I mean. Those bass spins at Rage, you know, they were bigger than me. You know what I mean? And, you know, and that was our spot, me, Kemi and Nikki, because it had the strobe right on top of the bass spin. We'd go there for quite a while doing let's make strobe faces. And we were like, well, you don't have to because you've got one anyway. Okay. And we used to love that bass spin, right? And then, of course, you could come back and then you would get the tops from the balcony and the mids. But if you wanted just a bit of dose of bass spin, you know, you could go straight in it for a while. And the thing was, there wasn't just these ones at the front. There was the ones at the back as well. So you don't always get
kind
that.
of swimming in bass. Like.
Yeah, well, you were allowed. There weren't all the restrictions, right? So they wanted us out of fields. The government wanted us out of fields and illegal raving because they couldn't make any money out of us, right?
Yep.
Let's get it straight.
Yep.
So then let's move us into clubs. And then, of course, it's the same with Hoxton Square. When we were first in Blue Note, Hoxton Square was pretty run down, right? There was...
That whole area.
people used to say to us, it's dangerous. You know, there's crackheads hang out in that garden. And we were like, really? You know, we're not even noticing it. We've been offered a club for 5 weeks and we're going to do it. And I think it's funny because our own success almost came and bit us in the backside, because the reason we couldn't get our license now was because the whole place was regenerated and there was a cinema next door on a Sunday.
Right.
So the bass would have...
Right.
So we were a victim of our own success at the
Massively.
Blue Note. Yeah.
I didn't realise it was only 5 weeks to begin with.
Yeah, we were offered 5 weeks, and I think there was Ninja Tunes were offered a night, and then Anuka was offered a night. It was really interesting, like labels, you know, of different genres. I think Eddie Pillar knew about music and had got his head, you know, kind of screwed on.
Yeah.
And obviously Goldie was, you know, had been signed now and was becoming a little bit famous, and, you know, on a very underground level, but he was getting out there. Do you know what I mean? I think he'd done the Word by the time we'd got Blue Note. Yeah, so we were offered 5 weeks to see if we could make it work. And obviously we did. You know, first week wasn't great. Second, you know, we had a bit of mashed up lineup because Goldie was like, I want these and these and these. And so, yeah, people were like, God, the lineups are odd. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I've got to get all these people in within 5 weeks. And, you know, it wasn't that until we got it rolling and then kind of got the new breed in there and got it, you know, our bank of DJs.
Yeah.
I suppose it took a little while to settle into itself, but once we got it going, wow. You know what I mean? Still one of my favourite places, I think, in the world, even though maybe one of the hardest places to DJ. You know, people thought, oh, it's really easy because you've got this big bass. No, it was not. You had that... It was a really small DJ box, and if you took your head out, it was like...
Oh, wow.
So,
because you guys brought in the Eskimo sound system as well there, which that was just as
Troy and
legendary.
Bevan, yeah, big up Troy and Bevan. Oh, they made that monumental, that sound. Yeah. And of course, we took them into Leisure Lounge, and then we took them into Hanover Grand as well. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, the sound system, I mean, you know, I can remember when the sound system fell over one night in the Blue Note.
Oh, what?
And nobody really cared, right? Everybody caught it, like, the sound system's going, quick, catch it. Because it was stacked up, right? And, you know, we had people kind of, you know, being taken out of there who'd had enough. You know what I mean? Everybody would cheer them. Yeah, Metalheadz has killed them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're wicked, that last vibe. Do you know what I mean? We're like, they're not dead, are they? You're like, no, they're alive. Okay, they're just saying that, are they? You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it was that hedonistic thing. And I think for Metalheadz, it was perfect because now we had a vehicle to sell our tunes. You know what I mean? And, you know, we had our logo on there. You could see what was coming, and, you know, you'd see all the guys with their heads going around with the vinyl trying to work out what it was. And Goldie gave them notebooks. Let's give the train spotters notebooks, and they can. So they'd be at the front.
He literally gave out notebooks.
Yeah, and then you had games upstairs, and he wanted the whole backgammon thing, and chess, and checkers, and whatever he had, and it was like a multi kind of vibing club with multi kind of senses going on all over the place. Do you know what I mean? So I think Blue Note was just a really welcoming place to people. We wanted you to come in, see what we're playing, go and buy it, please. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be part of the Metalheadz. And for me, I think it was kind of the first lifestyle kind of, it's like Goldie always said, I want to be the Stussy of like drum and bass, you know what I mean? Like
it's more than music, isn't it? This is culture,
and then you'd have the clothing that went with it, and the little bits and bobs, and eventually the jewelry and the hats, and so I think it became that little kind of like family thing, you know what I mean? And people want to buy into it. And it's lovely when I go abroad and, that person in the Metalheadz t-shirt will certainly make sure I see it, like, I've got the Metalheadz t-shirt on, like wicked, you know what I mean? So I think
it's a gang. It's a gang. Though.
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way. It's like it's a network of like-minded souls, really.
Yeah, and obviously for me, I experienced some wonderful artists who I'm pretty much friends with all of them. I think we were a little bit like, you could say their mums a little bit, or their bigger aunties. It's a nicer one.
Oh no, I'm torn now, because I was just going to whip out a quote from Loxy, a story from Loxy. But then when you're saying about being like an aunt or a big sister, I've also got an amazing one from J Majik as well. But I think I'll go on that one in a minute. But with Loxy, because it's literally talking about a Blue Note there, really. And this is what Loxy says about you. So Kemistry and Storm are engraved in our scene for being at the forefront and playing a huge part in my career by seeing something in me and bringing me on board when Blue Note's Metalheadz, when it was at its inception. After the tragic loss of Kemi, Storm continued to carry the torch for both of them. Storm's courage and fearless attitude to DJing is something I admire a great deal and wouldn't miss the chance to play at her 30-year anniversary.
Oh, Loxy.
Go on, Loxy.
Yeah, Loxy. Met him
and again, you were an influence, and Loxy, he's the sniper.
Yeah.
He's one of the top-level DJs.
He's an amazing DJ, and again, it gets so frustrating for me that some of these people are very underestimated, right? Like Spirit to a certain extent, you know what I mean? I think he was very underestimated. Yeah, everybody wanted to play his tunes, but always found it difficult. And towards the end there, it's incredible that he'd got everything sorted and he was coming through really strong. And same with Kemi. So we're right at the pinnacle, K7 album, and off you go. You know what I mean? Like, okay, maybe that was your lot in life to achieve that. And she always felt she wanted to make a difference, and she certainly did. You know what I mean? I think Duncan was the same, you know what I mean? And,
massively.
And I think he was, I have to say, very underestimated. And I think sometimes Loxy and Incard, you know what I mean? And but you know what? They're still out there. They're still doing their thing. I heard they ripped it up at Fabric for Goldie's night, you know what I mean? And, that's what I know in my heart, you know what I mean? That's what I know. And for me to be able to get them both together and, do their Ink and Loxy thing is fantastic. I mean, I love those guys. I mean, I met Ink on Defection FM, which was really cool.
Okay, wow, go on. All the way
and
back
then later on, when Defection FM, sadly, we had to finish Defection FM. It was getting really tight with the DTI, and
I heard that in another interview. Like, it was getting really, really intense. They were shutting it down all of the time and stuff like that.
They brought us in for a meeting, me and Kemi. And, Stitch was like, very respectful, loved Stitch. And he was like, oh, maybe I could have a word. He said, because we were kind of getting like raided not long after you two kind of leave.
Oh, every time?
Yeah, and he said, and I'm wondering, Kemi said, oh, do you think it's do you think it's the hair? He was like, maybe, right? Because maybe you're so recognisable right now, right? And we were like, okay, so Kemi had to get into hats, and I used to drop her off round the corner on her own, and then if we did happen to get in one of the lifts together, we'd just ignore each other, you know what I mean? And then she would get out on another floor, and she knew she had to get out on another, don't get out on the same floor, and I wouldn't even look at her, and then she'd get out, and one of us would either go up the stairs or down the stairs,
Wow.
because we were aware that anyone who was around right now
could be
was
DTI.
looking at. So yeah, Kemi had different hats every week. It was really cool. She got her hat collection. She loved hats, right? That was her big thing. So yeah, she didn't mind going for it with the hats, And again, we wouldn't leave at the same time. because I was the driver, I'd say, oh, go to the shop down, and I'll meet you there. Do you know what I mean? And then we were like, oh my God, is somebody following us? So then we'd do even more extremes, and I'd meet her at a tube station and pick her up. And I mean, we went to the extremes to try and do it. But you felt kind of at that point, once DTI were getting a bit more sophisticated.
Yeah.
We weren't that sophisticated. We weren't as sophisticated as Cool FM were with their door and everything. We didn't have that kind of... We moved around a lot, Defection.
Yeah.
We didn't have like a set place, do you know what I mean? I mean, when we lost our studio one week, we actually played at someone's house, you know, like with their mum and dad having Sunday dinner.
Oh, wow.
We were like, oh, so sorry. And they were like, no, it's fine, you know, and we had to play really quietly. But you know what? We got the job done. That's what I loved about Pirates radio stations.
Yeah.
It taught you so much. It gave you so much experience of maybe dealing, you know, with not so great sound and dodgy setups, and you know, because
just finding a way,
you had no
like
plugs
finding
on
a
anything
solution.
at a pirate radio station. It was all taped, so that if anyone came, you could pull everything out. You know what I mean? So you know, and we were like, why is there no? And they're like, you know, like if someone comes, you pull everything out. Don't worry, it's all taped in. There's no plugs. You don't have to unplug anything. You just pull it out. And we were like, right, that's why it's all taped up, because we didn't.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't understand that. You know what I mean? And they were like, you know, and at some places you'd have like a basket.
Wow. Okay, so you didn't lose all your stuff.
Yeah, I think a couple of our DJs lost their records.
I was going to say, were you ever involved in that? Were you ever there?
Lucky. We were very lucky. And in the end, obviously, you know, I think once they'd gone for us and we gave up, then they were solidly on to Cool. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I have to big up Eastman and all the people at Cool FM for still being here, right? Yeah. Because we were kind of all, you know, we came out of Weekend Rush. And then I think Cool FM kind of came out of us, you know what I mean? And we all had our lookouts and we worked together. We were all kind of around the same area of Clapton Pond, you know what I mean? And, you know, we were all in one tower block or another, you know what I mean? And it was, I mean, one day we went to someone's house and we were like, you know, an old man, and we were like, oh, right, this is not the right place. He was like, you know, bugger off, you know, what, you come round here, you know. Like, sorry. But it's a great experience, and it gives you the chance to, you know, you're not playing out yet, but here's your chance to play out. What would you play out? You know what I mean? Just because we had a Sunday show, we thought, no, we're not taking it easy. This will be our set as if we were playing out live on stage, you know what I mean? And, you know, and I think we always presented our set that way, you know, like, you know, you start out a little bit slower, a little bit musical, build it up, build into the crescendo at the end. And we got a really good reputation out of that. And towards the end, Ink had the show. I think he had the show after us, or did he have the show before us? He might have had the show before us. So we got to meet Ink, and then later on, then we obviously realised he lived in Crouch End. We lived in Crouch End, so we got to know Ink really well. And then he said, oh, this other person's doing this radio station called Underground FM. And Rage knew the person as well, so we had a show on there. That's where we met Loxy,
right?
And we heard him play, and we were like,
so it's all through the Pirates. You know, we started off with a quote about the Pirates and Marc Mac and stuff like that. That's really where you cut your teeth and really learned the art of DJing.
You know, I think, and when you travel to Europe and the rest of the world, they were so jealous of us having this illegal pirate situation, because there's no way they could get their head around trying to do something for that. And I think the consequences, say for example in Germany, if you tried to do something like that, was most probably very severe.
Yeah,
you know,
because they were still coming out of post-war Germany then, like late 80s, early 90s. There was still, you know, the wall was just coming down and stuff.
But I think it was something that the world was jealous of, the pirate radio stations, and without them, I don't think we would. I mean, how many people have gone out to one of those, you know, naughty raves from the pirate station? We did, you know what I mean? Meet the guy who come, you know, go to Tottenham Hale, go to the Arch, go to the. Some guy would just come out of nowhere with a hood and just give you a piece of paper, and you go, all right. Then you get to the petrol station, someone would have a bit more information there. Do you know what I mean? And then you go on, and then you get like within, I don't know, 5 miles of the rave. And then you'd see all the cars, you know what I mean? And I loved it, you know what I mean? I really enjoyed those kind of, you know, so they were instrumental pirate radio shows, especially in London.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, even like you're saying the world is jealous, Wales was jealous. We didn't have that in Cardiff or anything like that, you know?
Right.
And that brought in a whole other generation as well. It made sure that it exposed people, you know, kind of like we would get tape packs sent to us from friends or relatives in London and Birmingham and places like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was, but kids would be exposed to that. So you kind kind of knew about the music before you could even get to the rave or the club or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it was instrumental in our career because you learned so much. Do you know what I mean? I can remember one day when, and I've still got it on tape, and I'm saying, and the studio's fallen on Kemistry, but she's still in the mix. Because the whole cardboard came down on her. We had cardboard up at the windows, and I think this is one of the last stations we went to when we kind of went to the tower blocks, and it all came falling down on her. So I'm trying to get the cardboard, and I'm saying, but she's all right, she's still in the mix, And sometimes it would go down, and Miley would go, just keep mixing. We were like, yeah, but we can't hear anything. The monitor's gone, yeah, just keep going, yeah, just get. We would go, oh my God. So I'd count. Kemi would count to me, and because can't hear anything, right? All you can hear is, and we couldn't. I've never been able to split cue. All you people that can split cue in your headphones, well done. That's an art in itself. But I can't do it. You know what I mean?
You need to be hearing it. I
don't know what it is. I've seen some brilliant people who can split cue. Really on point. But for me, it didn't work. So we had some fun times, and I think you really kind of tear your teeth, on that kind of basicness of a pirate radio show. But I still, as well, another family, right, that you've got, because we loved all the people from there. And I mean, to think that Shabba was our MC, you know what I mean? So, and I mean, he sounds so young, he's so sweet,
He
what I mean?
really young then,
He was really young, maybe about 14, 15, maybe even 16, maybe 16, I'm not sure, but he was young. Him and Bookie Ranks regularly used to do our show, because we started out with Goldie being our MC, but Goldie started now being really busy and going on the road, and so, he couldn't always be there on a Sunday, so, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing, and I think a lot of people don't even know that Goldie was your MC for a while, really, kind of.
It's all on tape. I'm going to release it all soon. Get ready.
Brilliant. But speaking about age as well, because I got one more quote as well. So I wanted to get quotes from everybody on the lineup that you've got at Alchemy, but I wasn't able to. Everybody's been really busy and stuff, but I got this amazing one from J Majik. Now, I'm always blown away that J Majik's only a couple of years older than me, like 1 or 2 years older than me, but I grew up listening to him. I always thought he was so much older, but it's because he started so young, like Shabba, right? And stuff.
I mean, like Doc.
Doc.
Doc was. He was a legend when he was 18.
yeah. So here we go. Like that's it. Like that's quite old compared to this. So like Jamie said, I first met Jayne when I was about 15 years old in the back of Goldie's car with Kemistry. I was a massive fan, and as I'd grown up listening to Kemistry and Storm mixtapes, which at the time were legendary, and they had the reinforced connection playing all the new plates from the stable. Jayne was like a big sister to me from the first day we met, and genuinely always had my back. It really felt like a big family back then, and being so young, it was reassuring to have such a solid friend in Jayne and someone I always looked up to. She's such a diverse DJ who can switch it up from dark to light at any time. Thank you so much for all the memories, and may you keep spreading the quality beats to the new generation. So go on, J Majik. That's J amazing, Majik. And that just emphasizes loads of the stuff that you've said about kind of community and helping each other, and how tight everybody was, really.
Well, if you think, Goldie used to have meetings with the Metalheadz artists, and we would kind of let them decide who was good. Okay, what have you got? Who's got? I can remember when we had, it was going to be the first time that Photek met Dillinger, and we're sitting there, and Dillinger's got there, and we're waiting for Photek to come, or the other way around. No, I think Photek came in. I think Rupert came in second. And Goldie went at one point, oh my God, what if the world just implodes when you it's just so much genius between the two of you that the whole world would just explode, you know what I mean? And Clark was like, yeah, all right. We were so excited, you know what I mean? And we were all like really silent as Rupert came across to shake Dillinger's hand, and we were like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Because, Rupert, Carl, if you're out there, you've never done a track together. Could there be a possibility, please? I'm just putting it out there. Anybody who'd like that, just hit me up on Facebook. But it was like a monumental meeting of the minds. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I mean, really, their sounds were very different at the time, but kind of that drum and bass.
Both right on the cutting edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about J Majik. I mean, his Infrared album, I almost think it was almost way ahead of its time, that people didn't quite get all of it, yet, we loved it. Do you know what I mean? I think Jamie was a God, a genius. And I mean, still today, he's just rolling it out, and I'm so happy to see him and Lemon D, you know, coming back into things. And, you know, you're all allowed a little time out every now and again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're any less, you know, and you know.
If anything, it refreshes you, re-energizes you.
Well, I think it reminds you how
ideas.
brilliant these two are, you know what I mean? And what brilliant producers and how much music they gave you over the years, you know what I mean? Okay, we most probably all know Your Sound and Your Sound Remix, but you think about repertoire, you know, as a piece of music, and Love Is Not a Game. I mean, you know, Jamie just, carpets of velvet, you know, all over you when he makes music. Do you know what I mean? And I feel, you know, I see things as well, and I feel things when I'm hearing drum and bass. I mean, I see so many shapes in Goldie's music over the years, do you know what I mean? And lots of shapes in Ronnie Size and Crust and Die's music, you know what I mean? And squares and circles and triangles and all kinds of things.
Do you have synesthesia then?
Is that what it's called?
Also, when some people have shapes, some people have sounds, some people have colours and stuff like that, and it's just this kind of rewiring of your brain, really, where these things come into your head when you hear certain sounds. It sounds like you've got
maybe because, you know, like we were saying earlier, I do dream mixes. You know what I mean? I do dream mixes. You know, and it's funny because when I was having trouble with my physics, I was taught to kind of go to bed on a problem. And if you go to bed on a problem, you'll normally have the answer by the morning. And it nearly always worked for me. There would be me working it out in my head. You know what I mean? I'd read the kind of text that was supposed to explain the problem that I was having problems with before I went to bed. And normally in the morning that would work. Now, whether that somebody tells me that will work, because I'm one of those people, if you say, this will work, I go, oh, yeah, it really did. Right?
Yeah, like suggestion.
I'm very optimistic.
Like,
about most things. So, yeah, I still dream mixes. And I mean, I do hear mixes on the cuff as well when I'm playing out. I do think, oh, gosh, you know, especially when I'm doing old school, because, you know, I suppose all of us have been doing old school for so long now. And, you know, sometimes people will specify 92, 94. Can you do a Blue Note set? Can you do a Metalheadz set? Can you do a Speed set? Can you know, obviously Groove and Fabio get the Rage set. They must get so many sets, Groove and Fabio, over the years, you know, that they're asked to do. Yeah. And the way, you know, Randall came up with the genius way of going around it and calling it a history set, which I think covers everything, right? Brilliant. Well done, Rand. Do you know what I mean? So I think we're all doing that now. But what I'm really enjoying with old school, I am mixing like the eras now. Like I'll play something from 92 with something from 2000. The thing at 2000 might be down at -6, but I don't care. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's about now involving my set in different eras in a different way.
Joining different dots.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's so much more fun than just saying, oh, do this set or this set or this set. You know what I mean? It's like I'm doing a set later today, which I've been asked to do. And they've asked me to do 80% old school and 20% up front. And it's taken me quite a few hours to try.
That's a really interesting ratio. I mean, I wouldn't, if I ever ask anybody for a mix for my platform, then I just want to give them a complete free hand. But that's a very specific ratio to give you.
Well, I think what they're trying to get me to do is to go from the 90s into up to date. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, you know, I've had experience of these sets where you can do different timings. And I have to give that to Moondance because, you know, I've done, you know, people say, oh, 1 hour sets and 45-minute sets. But let's be honest, as a DJ, you should be able to encompass any lengths of set, yeah? Yep. And you will weight that set differently however it goes. So 45 minutes, I have gone from Dirty Games to Metropolis in 45 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, and it's how you do it and how you engineer your tunes. And there are maybe certain points where definitely you most probably need that big tune. You do a rewind, then you can pull it all up. But that's a skill in itself. Yeah. And I love that kind. So this one has been a bit of a head, you know, kind of, I don't use that word F, but it's really messing with my head, this set. But you know, I've got it together now, and I'm able to kind of do from. I've gone from about. I've got Space Funk in there, Renegade Snares, so I've gone early up to Depth Charge by Killjoy is my last tune. But I mean, Killjoy, oh God, he is really killing it right now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's exciting to see someone like Evan back. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's taken a bit of time out too, but oh my gosh, I don't really care because he's come in like the genius of drum and bass right now for me. You know, just dance floor tracks that are just killing it, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the lifeblood of the scene, really, and of the music. You know, it's great to have the experimental sides, but if it's not making people move, if there isn't that kind of source of energy that's making people move on the dance floor, none of the other periphery stuff and the experimental stuff and that can happen, really.
Yeah, well, it's kind of nice to see those kind of heavy tunes back, and I think it's really nice over the last few years for the Aim and Break to be given a break again. You know what I mean? It was almost like it was a dirty word for a while. Do you know what I mean? You know, and obviously we understand the roller coaster of drum and bass, and sounds take over for a while, and then another one comes along. But I think, you know, it's all really interesting now with people like Sherelle, LCY, Riz Latif, Tim Reaper, Sully, Coco Bryce, kind of bringing that kind of space in breaks, you know what I mean? A lot of space in breaks, you know what I mean? And I think that's really nice to hear that again, because there's nothing wrong with it, you know. And
the return of the 4-beat as well. Like, I just saw Double O the other day at Rupture, and it was pretty much all 92, 93, and it was all hardcore, all stompy. But again, like that, a lot of contemporary stuff can be brought into that kind of return of the 4/4, which like that hasn't really seen anything.
Depth charge, right? He does a proper 4/4 to the floor before he breaks it down, right? You know, and then he comes with the cut the mid-range, drop the bass line. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just like, I cannot. Sorry, Evan, but I can't control myself. I look like a mad woman when I'm dancing to that tune. But it just moves me in so many ways. And it's like with J Majik coming back, you know, he's just, I mean, I played Blake as my last tune at Waterworks recently. And again, I've done some great festivals in the last year. Do you know what I mean? Really, really joyful. And, you know, even Cross was like, I said, yeah, J Majik. He went, I should have known. And I went, yeah, you know, because I crossed live after me and I'd never heard that before. And that's so exciting. D Bridge is doing his live thing. Cross is doing his live. How interesting, right? Yeah. You know, Groove and Fabio doing the orchestra. That's so exciting, you know?
Yeah, we are at this amazing point of evolution there, really, where it's almost like we're kind of back to square one, where anything goes. There's no rules or anything like
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. And like I say, it's interesting, you know, a lot of harps to the past with certain DJs interest in tunes, and it's almost like the younger people, they, you know, if you do a vinyl set, they do really love you for it. You know what I mean? I did a record shop a couple of years ago now, in kind of cusping on the COVID time, and young people in there buying vinyl, which was so lovely to see. You know, and then asking me about my vinyl and could they write it down. I said, do you want me to write it down for you? And they were like, yeah. And I said, whether you'll get hold of it or not, you know, I don't know, but you can try. You know, there is some vinyl about, you know what I mean?
Do you think that's because we've just reached a point of where accessibility has been, you know, like you can stream anything, you can access anything, you can watch anything online, but to actually have an artifact, to have a belonging, to have a piece of vinyl, you know, like that's new for the new generation. And I think there's a buzz, there's a thrill in ownership, and it's not just accessible to everybody. It's almost like it taps into the old dubplate culture in a way, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose, you know, I'm still on CDs. Everybody who knows me knows that. But, you know, I kind of had to change my mindset with CDs as well, and, you know, keep tunes for a while, you know, in my set. I mean, one tune from Response, I mean, the Conversation, I think I started with it for about 3 years, you know what I mean, to just kind of say, right, okay, Storm's here. As soon as you heard that, you know, well, Storm's here, you know, and it didn't come out, so I'm like, okay, it's still viable. Big up Response and Pliskin, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, and people were like, what is that tune? I was like, yeah, it's Response. And they were like, we don't know. I said, no, you don't. But, you know, I'm playing it and people know me, and I've tried to hang on to things and kind of treat them like dub plates. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because even for the Outlook, I did at Chonry Castle, you know, I did my 30-year stage, and I was kind of dedicating my first set to Kemi's, tunes that Kemi's played, tunes that Kemi played of Marcus, and tunes that Kemi played of Spirit. So that was my whole set.
That's an emotional
I had to call Digital and say, it's really odd because obviously Spirit was a little bit later, right? You know what I mean? She played a lot more of your stuff than she did of Duncan's. And I said, but I can remember playing her these tunes. And then Steve went, don't forget, Jayne, you had things on dub plate for 3 years back in the day. Yeah. And he said 2 at a minimum, right? I said, God, yeah, you know what, Steve? I didn't think about that. Yeah. He said, so if you can hear her playing it, go for it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I kind of did all...
And even if it's slightly out, there's capturing the essence and the energy of someone, isn't there?
Yeah,
like, you know that there are particular tunes. I imagine, do you still get this to this day where you hear a tune and you think, Kemi would have loved that?
Oh God, yeah. We used to cut. Well, we say this thing, right? That we used to cut each other's dub plates, and we shared one set of records. she had her sides and I had her side. Of course, now she's gone, the whole gamut has opened up to me, right? Because there's a mix I've been doing, and I remember us working really hard on this mix, and it was one of those, one of those kind of big drop mixes with Heads Roll and Up All Night by John B, so Inca Loxy, and it was a Kemi mix.
Yeah.
And it was like, when we said, oh God, wouldn't it be mad if we could get the double drop going on the end of the end breaks? And it's something like a, I don't know, 3 minutes 20 mix. And I drew it out at Outlook, and and then Digital was like, are you going to go over the drop? I said, I'm really scared. Yeah, go on then.
Go on.
I did it, you know what I mean? And I thought, okay, that's and again, because I've got set lists, I can pull Kemi's mixes out of the set books.
Wow.
So when I did the mix, I thought, let me go to the set books and pull I could remember a couple of her mixes, because I can remember us both working on the mixes together, and we used to count bars, and I mean that Heads Roll one took a lot of moving about to get that double drop on the end of it.
Well, you did with vinyl and stuff like that, because arrangements weren't quite as rigid, like, and producers would like include this extra 4-beat here and stuff like that. Like,
God,
with vinyl, you would have to do like bits of, you'd have to do some maths to work out some of the mixes and stuff, wouldn't you?
Well, when I went back and did the 25 years of Reinforced mix, wow, yeah, that was like an army kind of, kind of on the battlefield thing, you know what I mean? I had to really count bars, and did I want that drop to happen or that drop to happen? When I mixed it at stretches and I showed him the list, he was going, what does that mean? And I said, well, I know what it means, right? Because it says 1 times 8, 2 times 8, half times 8, and he was like, and you've got it for every mix. I said, because there was no rules, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, you just made a tune. And there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, but maybe there was 2, 3 or 4 drops. And I said, you only have to look at Ace and close your eyes, right? It's got every single thing you could ever want in one tune, and it's about 9 minutes long. You know what I mean?
It's about 4 or 5 different tunes all in one, really. And it's because a lot of producers didn't DJ, so they didn't understand.
Right, and there were no rules.
Yeah.
It came out of what was going on in the mix. Fabio and Groove did that mix. That's what they were creating, not each tune, because that was the difference there, that you're mixing house with techno or you're mixing acid with techno. That wasn't going on. And other DJs were saying to Groove and Fabio, no, you can't do that. You could hear that. Mr. Kurt's Nightmare, it's a classic, right? Yeah. And I mean, me and my friends sit down sometimes and go, why did we all cheer when they go, your son is dead? Yeah. We're a bit of a 16 sometimes, you know what I mean? But, you think of what's in that tune. And, I mean, for me, my Shut Up and Dance stuff is like, it's got extra sleeves and another sleeve. And, and nobody really, could come anywhere near my Shut Up and Dance collection to this day. You know what I mean? Because it just, to me, has got that feeling of, and bringing in the Ragga Twins and, hearing that lyric first on a tune and thinking, okay, yeah, that can really work, right? That's made by us, like people from this scene. That's like the mix. Yeah. It's got a bit of techno in it, and it's got a bit of house. I mean, you think about Slave, you know what I mean? What a tune, you know what I mean? And, Hooligan 69 and, all those early tunes. And they then inspired other labels to start, and all those labels didn't always survive. Like Shoebox Record, they were most probably around for 7-8 years, and other labels that kind of came for a few releases and went, but it was so much vinyl, and again, it actually cost us a lot more to be DJs back in the day than it does now.
Oh, hugely. With like cutting dubs, and even without cutting dubs, like collecting and the actual kind of, because vinyl prices stayed as they were throughout, like the kind of, it was always £5 or £7 for an import or something like that. Really, it was a costly habit, wasn't it?
Yeah, and if you wanted to cut a dub plate, and I mean, it took us years to be able to cut 12-inch dub plates. You know what I mean? It was all like 10-inch dub plates were all we could afford, because I think they were like £5 more expensive. But eventually
that made a difference. Like when you're cutting multiple plates and stuff, that meant that you could cut an extra plate and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I suppose as DJs we didn't buy a lot of vinyl. Once you got to a stage, people did send it to you. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, there was the odd thing that would be in black market that was new and you'd buy it, or Music Power and you wanted it and you had to have it. Do you know what I mean? But I think as DJs, that's what we spent most money on, dub plates. Yeah. And we did spend a lot. I've got a whole
storage space out there of them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, you could open a museum with like the books and the dub plates, and you've got like real artifacts here, like proper historical documents of drum and bass history.
Well, I've got all my flyers too.
Oh wow, amazing! There must be millions. You must have like a whole other floor of the house.
I've got boxes of flyers, yeah, and my posters. You know what I mean? When I think as a DJ, when you got a poster, you were like, oh my God, we're on a poster, and you'd see me and Kemi at the end of the night ripping off the poster off the wall. Can we take the poster? With the blue tack or try and get off carefully, it's got sellotape, you know what I mean? You'd have a bit of the wall come off with it, do you know what I mean? But for us, we were like, oh my God, we're not just on a flyer, we're on a poster.
Yeah. Can you remember the first kind of poster that you saw of yourselves in that type of way?
Oh, gosh. It was most probably something in Europe, Yeah, I think, they were way ahead of us when it came to visuals, you know what I mean? And I think apart from obviously Rage and Coventry and that kind of, Rage was on point. And of course you did have like, Sanctuary, those kind of things, had lasers and, I suppose, your illegal things, the most you were going to get was a smoke machine and strobe.
Yeah.
But actually I quite loved that, do you know what I mean? I loved a strobe. That's all I needed really, we had a strobe at home and we never went for the smoke machine, but I had a little strobe and I've still got it here, and a little kind of thing where you could put stuff on the ceiling so that if we were mixing at home we felt we were in the club.
Brilliant.
Well, it was funny, our setup was always with our backs to our people, like my friends, because when we were in there, that was, and my mates could all come around and have a chat, and I might stop for a minute, and then I'd be like, no, you know what, I'm mixing, do you know what I mean? It was like we were the entertainment when you came round, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is all just, this whole conversation is all about the art of DJing, really, and the love for the art of DJing, and the last quote I'm going to throw at you is one of yours, and it's from an American interview, actually, but it's, my only true solace is being in the mix. Still to this day, it's the only place where I feel 100% happy, and that Kemi is just behind me waiting to go on. And I think that's giving me goosebumps now.
Yeah, it's very true that, you know what I mean. And I've always felt that sense of her. I've never really seen her. I feel her sometimes, and I feel like I've just caught of her going past me, do you know what I mean, or something. My friend sees her a little bit more than me in the club, but that's, I think after Kemi passed, again, and I don't think I ever had that doubt that I'd carry on, but obviously there was that doubt, can I do it on my own, and right about that time I'd have to play her set, right, because we were doing the K7 tour. And
so you had to carry on regardless. I was going to say, what was the first set that you played?
Well, I'll never forget it. It was Bar Rumba. And my whole agency had come out, Sarah included, and KT, who was working there at the time. And it was really emotional, and they were all squashed in the box of Bar Rumba. And, before I started, I just said to Brian, I can't do this. I can't do this, Then Brian started telling me about celebrating somebody and Nine Night and how they do in Jamaica, and she'd be like, come on, she'd want you to do this, and and to a certain extent, I feel like I needed that talk from Brian, that DJ chat you have to just to tell yourself, because for me, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I get these tunes right of hers. I've never played these tunes, you know what I mean? And and I'd obviously at home had a little practice with her tunes and thought, what was the last set she did? How did it go? And you know what I mean? And I was, but and I looked around at everybody and they were all smiling at me and all wanting me to do well, and I felt that. So I thought, you know what, you'll know right now if this is for you. You know what I mean? And it was, and I do feel that comfortable in the mix, and not that I'm saying I don't get nervous. I mean, for a boiler room the other week, I was just, needed a good deep breath. I mean, if you see me actually pacing, then I'm really nervous. You know what I mean? And if I'm blowing a bit, and it's funny that people will try and come and talk to you like 2 minutes before your set, and they kind of get this weird blank expression of me. I know they're talking, but I haven't got a clue what they're saying, because I'm thinking, do you know what? Maybe I will start with that digital, or should I, that I did last week, should I start with that? And that's what my mind's doing. I want my first 2 mixes solid in my head, so I've not got to worry about where they are. I know where they are. Okay, because you need to have a solid start. You know what I mean? I would say that to every DJ, and there's nothing wrong with having a few things set up to know where you're going. As you get on the road more, you don't need to do that as much. It comes naturally. These tunes go in and out of your set. As long as, I still practice. And I mean, I didn't have decks for about 10 years. I was doing it all in my head. Do you know what I mean? And I've learned now to really mix in my head. I used to have a system of rollers bassline, rollers music, bassline music. I had all these different, and if you saw my CDs, you see MV, that was musical vocal bass, or MVB, or whatever it was. And then I knew what it was, and I could get those sets together. And
Brilliant.
you know, and if I had difficult tunes, I mean, Interval from Spirit was one of the most, and I just sat with my CD Walkman and sang until I found something that I found. Yeah, I'm such a DJ nutter. But whatever works, because I don't think I ever forget the bottom line, that I'm earning money to do a job. That's the bottom line, if you want to look at it straight in black and white. But I'm here to entertain you, and if we're not dancing, what's the point? You know what I mean? You know, and okay, so certain people can say my set's a certain way, but touch wood, I haven't cleared a dance floor yet, everybody. So you know what? It's still working for me. And I do like to get very involved in my sets, and I do like to...
Like the last time I've seen you play, like from behind the decks, from like right up close range, really privileged position, was at XOYO for Andy C.
Yeah.
And you know, you're just as locked in as the records are.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, I hope so. Do you know what I mean? And I think, again, you know, when you get booked like someone like Andy C, it is a real privilege, you know what I mean? And he's such a great DJ, and I think he's inspired so many people. And I can remember hearing him when he was, you know, new, and Randall was like, oh, there's this new guy called Andy C, and I think he was playing on a Thursday at what was Paradise Club then.
Yeah.
And he said, you've got to come and hear him. Do you know what I mean? He's really interesting and really great at what he does. And you know, from the moment we heard him and we knew some of the tunes, there was Suburban Bass by Dillinger, and you know, there wasn't many clues to this beginning, and you know, we were like, oh God, he's going for the Suburban Bass, you know, this will really show us. And it was perfect, you know what I mean? And you know, and I mean, let's be honest, he's gone on to do this scene really, really proud, right? I mean, Wembley, you know what I mean? And now he's doing O2, and you know, so for me to be booked was almost like, you know what? Yeah, Andy C thinks I'm a good DJ, so that kind of makes you do feel good about yourself, you know, that you're in that position to be booked for something like that, because Randall's booked as well, and he's my hero, and I still try to be as quick as Randall in the mix. I'm still getting there, do you know what I mean? But you know, I still aspire to him, you know, and for Andy to book me was just...
Andy still aspires to Randall as well, you know, like talking to Andy, and you know, Andy puts Randall on that same pedestal as well, really.
Well, I think that's what I love about Andy, you know, he is most probably the biggest DJ in our scene, you know, and yet he's just the same as when I met him years ago. You know, I saw him in the airport, we were all going to Albania for hospitality on the beach, and there was Nicky Black Market, me, IC3, Tom Piper. I felt like we were all down at Music House, you know what I mean? And, you know, there was not many, their flights were getting delayed, and of course Luton's quite a small airport, and there were no seats, and Andy was like, well, we used to stand all day at Music House, this is nothing to us. We were like, yeah, Music House crew in Luton, do you know what I mean? We can stand, you know, drum and bass people could stand for hours. You know, but that was a really fantastic gig for me, I have to admit, you know what I mean? And I think XOYO is a really exciting club, right? You know?
That whole concept of creating or recreating that community, really, and you know, like especially for the Andy ones, but I know like Hype is doing one at the moment, and there's a Zinc
really
has done
interesting.
one,
Yeah.
and you get regulars, and you know, to have regulars, like the whole idea of regulars really isn't such a thing anymore, I think, you know, but have that community based around an event is a really special
you know,
thing.
Membership, right? I mean, you know, Zara's still got the membership book from the Blue Note, right?
Wow.
With all the pictures in, you know, that were taken of all the members. And I mean, we got that from, and that's the thing I think that's missing. You know, I think membership is a really nice idea, you know, and obviously we learnt about membership from Rage. And I mean, they used to send you letters, you know what I mean, about what events they were doing. And you felt, again, part of this Rage family, you know, and you know, people don't do that anymore. They don't do membership and membership cards. And I think it's a really nice way to be involved. You feel, oh God, I'm part of this. And obviously you get a few perks because once you've got your card, you can go in the guest list queue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Making it work for you, you know?
Yeah. But there are still events, and this really kind of, you know, we can wrap things up a little bit here with like Alchemy is a night which, you know, I will go to as often as I possibly can. And Lee has done really well, the promoter has done really well to kind of create that community. And you do see regular faces. There are people that I only ever see at Alchemy and at Rupture.
Sure.
You know, maybe that's an age stage
we have to
thing
give
as
Rupture a
well.
shout as well.
Yeah.
They've made something really special there, and I'm so
Incredibly.
proud of, Mantra and Double O, and great people. I actually call Mantra Wonder Woman of this scene because, she's got it all going on, you know what I mean? And 3 children, a label, she's DJing, EQ50, you know what I mean? She's absolutely multi-talented, you know what I mean? She's like the Wonder Woman I was seeing for short, you know what I mean?
Massively.
But yeah, Alchemy is going to be fantastic, and again, thanks to Lee for inviting me to do this, you know what I mean? It's a joy to be able to curate your own night, and just show the people that have been important to you over the years. And I mean, all the people that are on my lineup and all the people that were on the 30-year lineup in Cholmondeley Castle, they're all people that are really integral in my career, and who are still today. I can pick up the phone and we can have a chat. How many people are there like that? But I think our scene is like that, and and I think when I go abroad and I've talked to some techno DJs and they say it's something that they're very jealous of, that we're all, even if we've got a little bit of beef with each other, when we're abroad, we are united, you know what I mean? Or when we're together somewhere, we are united, we're on each other's side. And I do think drum and bass has always been like that.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
And I think for me, Simon, Scott, and giving me the boat party in Dimension with LCY and Sherelle. I mean, what a dream was that for me? You know what I mean? 3 women, kind of sorting it out on the boat, selling out just like the guys. You know what I mean? And nothing
And
happened. The sky
board.
didn't fall in, or the boat didn't explode. It nearly did because we were all so hot. I mean, we were hot. But yeah, massive shout to LCY and Sherelle for doing that for me. And now, coming to Alchemy, it's a different lineup again, and again a different part of, I've got my list of all the people I kind of want to get in, for this 30-year thing, and we're getting there slowly.
What a joy though to be able to do that. And I guess it's like a kid in a candy store then, when
you're
the
beauty of like knowing DJs like I do from my career, again on my Sun and Bass lineups are always solid DJs. It's the only, I can't have someone that can't DJ, on my lineup, and I've gone with, some really solid people, and, and again brought maybe people that, people won't really know, like Response, he's absolutely smashed it for me in Sun and Bass, you know what I mean? He was actually we did a Spirit Remembrance night when obviously because Spirit was supposed to play for me that year, and sadly he passed away. So we did.
That was a heavy one. That was 2018, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was the last Sun and Bass I went to.
Yeah,
and that
right.
was like,
I mean, and it was
everyone was drawing for Duncan's tunes.
It was just off the hook, right? Do you know what I mean? And I mean, the fact that Response plays vinyl, and I don't know, he's just so cool with his sound, and he's got it all going on. He knows when to bring the bass in, and he's just very casual, but killing it at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So it's been nice. And again, the people I'm choosing now, the beauty is I haven't got to worry about it, right? Because I know all their strengths, and I know they're just great DJs. So for me, that's easy to do. It was the same with doing Feline. I knew all the girls could do their stuff, so I didn't have to worry about how they're going to play, and they're not fighting for set times, and we're all working this together, and Tasha and India taking out flyers for me, and you were all a little bit of a community, to create those little families and families is a really nice thing, and I felt working with the women was really easy, really easy, and working with my guys is really easy. This has come together really easy. I'm so glad, I've tried to get J Majik for a while, and Ink and Loxy, and it's just been, and of course Groove and Fabio, do you know what I mean, and Marc Mac, and my first MC ever, Rage, and I'm so proud of him with his Rebel Clash kind of vibe going on as well. He's doing really well, and
massively,
again able to do what obviously is something moving to him, do you know what I mean, emotional for him, and to get on the decks, and now he's traveling both sides, and that's fantastic, you know what I mean. So we'll go right back to the beginning, me and Rage, on that night, because he was our first MC who came on the road with us, and he was very young, you know what I mean. So we had some fun with Rage on the road. We went to some venues. The venue in this place in Wales, can't remember where it was now, but it was heaving, and we always said if there weren't Technics in the place, we would walk straight out. Well, there weren't Technics in the place. We had never seen these decks before. And they handed,
we got special Welsh decks we have in Wales.
Welsh decks, obviously, something to do with leeks and I don't know, dragons and something, you know what I mean. So anyway, they gave my Rage this like bright blue binatone mic with a bright blue binatone lead, and Rage said, listen, if I pick that up in MC, you two are DJing, right? You're not going anywhere. We were like, you know what, Rage, we've got to sort this out. So we did. It took us a while to get the technique. They were like belt-driven decks, right? And, we'd never worked on them before, but we got there eventually. They were pretending to be Technics, but they weren't Technics. You know what I mean? You could, if you touch them, they stop. If you push them, they you know what I mean? So you had to kind of work out your technique, and most probably get really good on the pitch that night. Do you know what I mean? But we worked it out, and we had the best time, because I have to say that ravers, I've had some of my best times in Wales, right? They really know how to rave, right? I mean, Club Iferback, I think for me and Kemi, it was just a joy, that club, right? And again, it had a proper system in there, you know what I mean? And now Luby J is doing stuff, I love that lady, you know what I mean?
Shouts to Luby J, she's got a night going on Friday that I'm going to with Rupture DJs playing. Brilliant. Yeah, no, I mean, she's a force to be reckoned with as well, do you know what I mean? And I think it's interesting because, again, I feel Wales has gone in and out, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I mean, I did this rave in Abergavenny, Headroom, and that was really cool, you know what I mean? And I mean, in a beautiful location. You're on the foot of the Brecon Beacons there. What's wrong with that? And again, I've done a couple of festivals in Scotland, which have been really nice. And again, I think they love their music. You know what I mean? We've always had a great time up in Scotland. Yeah. So what are you looking forward to? Obviously, you're looking back and celebrating 30 years, but you're always looking forward, and that's something that we've taken from this conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's interesting because I just did. There's those places. That you play, that you've been playing for a long time, and I think Tübingen, which people go, where? Which you're going, which is about 30 miles south of Stuttgart. I've played for a couple of guys there, Telmo and Lightwood, they just celebrated their 25 years of Pressure, and I think I've played 24 there.
Wow.
And those guys, Jürgen, and now we've got Timo, kind of been doing the visuals for last year. Again, I get to do 4 hours there, which is really, really cool. Yeah. And I've done that for 24 years, do you know what I mean? And it's fantastic. And,
brilliant. That's got to be one of the longest standing drum and bass nights then in, globally, perhaps.
Absolutely, right? But, it's almost like that secret, in South Germany, Tübingen. It's kind of like a very university place. I mean, it's beautiful, Tübingen. It's very old-fashioned, German-looking, with the water going through the town, and classic. People are rowing and punting, and they have rubber duck races there, which are really cute. And I stay on the hotel kind of right by the river, and they're just a really lovely, set of people. And, I've seen Jürgen and his wife here and their children be born and grow up. And it's the same with Ollie and Beata, his wife. And, the children came to kind of breakfast with us the other week after 25 years, and Telmo and his little one, and they're just they're like a family to me now, you know what I mean? And it's so, and again, I've got Rumba in kind of Bologna, who first brought me to kind of Venice, no, it's not Venice, Florence. It was Villery and Alyosha, my other family from Milan, who took me to Venice. So I've got all these little pockets of families, and I'm still friends with them all.
I love that. I was speaking to Allegria, who does Drum Obsession in Poland, about this. There are these nights which, especially when you go as far out as New Zealand, you mentioned Jeff earlier, they are family, aren't they? Because and especially when you're one of the earlier DJs to go out and, kind of take the music to these places, they do become family. They're looking after you, aren't they?
We've got a kinship, and we've got a kinship through this unspoken language of music. And that's the one thing I've realised over the years. I am speaking to you, not in your own language, but in the language of my music, in my set while I'm doing it. We're having a conversation. It doesn't matter whether you're in Japan, Brazil, here, there. People, when you play a tune, people are saying to each other, tune, in Japanese, whatever language you're speaking at the time, you know what I mean? And I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think when, again, I don't like politics getting involved in my scene either, you know what I mean? I just, leave that out and let's do what we love, which is playing music, you know what I mean? And, obviously it's a different way for people now, I mean, obviously back in the day, it's like you were saying earlier, we did have a producer DJ system, and it didn't really cross, you know what I mean? And unfortunately now, the younger people can't make money from digital downloads, so they kind of feel like they have to go into DJing.
And there are some who really don't want to be up on that stage in front of people.
Most probably not, but I think unfortunately you can tell that. You know what I mean? When a certain DJ plays and doesn't want to be there, you know what I mean? But, you know, I still have to give you props for trying to get out there, you know what I mean? And I do understand that if you want to be with this scene 24/7, that's what you have to do now. You are forced into it whether you like it or not, because I'm so shocked at the little money that people get paid for the hours of work they put into a beautiful production. You know, it's
a travesty.
It is really. I'm not sure if there's a change, you know, or it could change. I don't know. You know what I mean? And I think that then makes music a little bit throwaway.
Yeah.
And I think then as the DJ, that's why I've held on to tunes for a while, so that people get to hear them a few times from me, not just once from me. You know, I don't want the music that all the producers that any DJ plays, hey, thank you very much, we're in love with what you're doing, right? You know, I want to get your tune in the mix. I want to, you know, still when Dillinger or Digital, I mean, Digital walked in right when I was playing Space Funk and Outlook. I was like, oh. And of course, that's a Kemi tune, right? She always played Space Funk. So when I get back to it, I've got to think of that on-off thing at the beginning, you know, and I'm saying to my, oh no, Steve's here. Oh no, don't quick, hold down the mix.
Can't mess this up.
Dillinger used to walk in at Blue Note, coming, oh no, I was going to play that Dillinger, but he's come now. I was like, no, you'll be all right. Yeah, but he's watching me. Yeah, I mean, oh God, don't mess it up. You know, because you know, you're very privileged to have this music. I don't make tunes, right? So, you know, as much as, you know, there's sometimes the sexist thing going on, and between most of the people I play are guys. You know, women haven't got greatly into production yet. Some people have. You see Natasha Sweet Pea getting into stuff, making some really cool stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, there's
You've
a
got
brilliant
Rhea and
wealth.
Colette Warren doing stuff.
Yeah.
Salo's coming. I met Salo in Albania, and I'm now playing a tune that she's done with L-Sides, which is really, really cool.
God.
Do you know what I mean? So you have got it going on, but on the whole, most of the people that give you tunes are men. And I love all of them.
Did you not? Because I mean, earlier on you were talking about your musical upbringing and stuff, and you were playing the accordion and things like that. You could have easily, and you had access to the studio. Everybody made you feel welcome, so you could have gone into the studio and you could have written more music.
Sure.
But did you kind of keep that gap as a DJ so you didn't ruin the magic of the creation? Well, I think
obviously we had these 3 days from Reinforced to go and make a tune, which we did. And it was really great fun with Digo, and managed to make a tune. Well, yeah, the DAT was taken by certain someone, and then they lost the DAT, so Digo kind of had to remake it without us there, but remembered it all, do you know what I mean, because he's a genius. But it was really good fun to be with Digo. But what we realised was if we wanted to make tunes, we would have wanted to be in control of that, because I think Kemistry and Storm, we were control freaks over everything we did. So did we have money to buy any of that kind of studio stuff? No. Right. So at that point we said, okay, let's concentrate everything that we do in DJing and get that really going. And, you know, and obviously if that ever's that opportunity in the future, and, you know, I never say never. I have ideas, you know, and, you know,
wow,
Digital keeps offering me that time, and hopefully me and Digital will get to sit down. I mean, again, one of my dearest, greatest friends, you know what I mean, Digital, you know, and
big up Steve. If
yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
Steve.
for me, Function through the last years has been that real pure drum and bass label,
regardless of trend in any type of way.
I mean, the Jet Li EP, you know. Gosh, I played that for so long because sometimes, you know, a piece of music moves you and you don't want to take it out of your set. I mean, it's like I'll Be There, Fats, Makoto. Yeah, it's out. It's been out for ages. I don't care. People have got little dances to it now with the you know, and I'll Be There, you know what I mean? And they give me little signs, and, you know, it's almost like you're allowed. I kind of feel you've got to have those little tracks in your set that you've played for a while and don't let it get thrown away, you know what I mean? It's a beautiful piece, and as long as you can keep moving it around in your set and making it hit slightly differently, and that's the art of a DJ as well, you know, having the same set of tunes but mixing them in a whole different way. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if you gave 10 tunes to me and 10 tunes to Groove and 10 tunes to Andy and said do a mix, we'd all do it slightly differently, right? Do you know what I mean?
That's
but it would most probably
it,
have the same effect. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to do that with someone and say, right, let's take 20 tunes and, you know,
that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
You mix them, then I'll mix them, and you know what I mean? That'd be quite good fun, you know what I mean?
But it's upholding the value of music then, isn't it? When you've got these special tunes, it doesn't matter how many times I'll go and see you play, you'll bring it in a different way, and it's upholding the value. So things aren't just throwaway, really.
No, and and it's interesting as well, and I think, you know, like I say, all these people that I've booked on any of my nights, you know what I mean? Again, you know, they're always excited for me to be you know, when I play their tunes, they want to hear what I can do with it. You know what I mean? And, you know, I think, again, when you've got that relationship, that symbiotic relationship, you know, you're inspiring each other both ways to a certain extent. You know what I mean? When a producer hears what you can do with their tune, you're just like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you know, and obviously, I think for progression, you know, you think of someone like Source Direct, everybody's like, whoa, hang on, what is this sound right now? You know what I mean? They were young guys who were excited. You could hear that in the music. They were young, excitable guys who wanted to make this music. But whoa, sometimes their tunes were hard to place. But, you know, you had to learn that art at that time. And I think for me and Kemi, we were doing Wax Club, Telepathy. And Shabba was on the mic for us. And we'd got a few new tunes. And we'd got this Source Direct thing, which was on Certificate 18. And we played the tune, and we knew, you know, again, it was more jungly from them. You know, it had much heavier bass line from them. And, you know, we're playing it. And I think I played it out of MA2. I think I can even remember the mix. And, of course, people were loving MA2. And then I got the rewind, but, of course, I rewound the Source Direct, not the MA2. And that's how me and Kemi did it. We played those difficult tunes over something a bit more obvious, made a big mix out of it, and then they'd be like, rewind, and then you draw back the difficult, maybe the more difficult tune, or the maybe, you know, just put in a different way. And I think when we got that rewind, Kemi went, we've made it, we got a Source Direct rewind at Wax Club for Telepathy with DJs. And I went, yeah, we've arrived, you know. So yeah, I think it was always exciting to us, you know, to make sure we got our tunes across, and, you know, and make sure you learn that positioning. And that's down to, I suppose, you could say I'm a geek of mixing. I most probably am.
You definitely are.
If I want to play something that might be a little bit more difficult, I will work hard to get that in the set because I want to play it. You know what I mean? I need people to feel what I'm feeling right now. And, you know, it's like Kemi always said, that kind of really famous line, and I think it's really true. Never underestimate what a crowd can handle.
Yeah.
You know, because certain things that we played back in the day, you know, you could see some of our interviews. I read one the other day and somebody said, oh, was that Innovation last night? And you know what? Kemistry and Storm actually played a really good set. It wasn't so plinky plonky. I was like, oh, okay, so that's how we sounded a bit. You know, I think we had a lot of beats, you know what I mean, when we first came. And I suppose a Photech beat would sound slightly different from a jungle beat, you know, even though to me, we always said Photech was a 21st century junglist. Wax Doctor was a junglist. Caliber's a junglist. You know, to me, it's more about the bass line than anything else, because that's how I heard jungle being taught to me. You know, that it was about reggae bass lines being doubled up and giving it that deep, rich sound. You know what I mean? Not so much about the lyric. You know what I mean? But that's coming back too, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know.
No, definitely, and I think it's all the same language. It's just different dialects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, there's all flavours out there at the moment, which is a good thing. You know what I mean? You can pick and choose what you like and what you don't like, and that's up to you. You know what I mean? And I really enjoy that. You know, and I really enjoy working hard on my set. You know, you are earning money at the end of the day. You know, and you should be on point. And I think most women feel this, that, you know, we're not allowed to get anything wrong when we mix. You know, I think we've always felt that pressure. I mean, Rap said that.
And you've experienced that as well firsthand with the Boiler Room situation a few years ago as well, didn't you?
When we played in Fire, and God, what was going on with the monitor? None of us could mix. You know what I mean? We just couldn't work out what it was. You know what I mean? And I came off the decks thinking, oh my God, my career's over. You know, I've just played I don't even know what was going on there. You know, when I talked to Randall and he said, oh, did you listen to the other people who were playing? They all had problems, Jayne. There was something going on with that monitor. And I said, right, I thought it was just me, right? Because I thought I'd played such a... you know, and as the DJ, if something goes slightly wrong, you feel it like 1,000 times more than what the crowd is.
Oh, God,
you think, oh, my God, that was awful. You know what I mean? And I did this. And, you know, I do stupid things when I get excited. I tried to put a record on a record playing with Tasha the other week. I got so excited. And we looked at each other and she was like... And I was like, oh, my God, I'm so crazy, right? I had such fun, you know what I mean? Like doing that, you know, that was wonderful for me, doing that back to back with Tasha. And the fact that, you know, at Houghton, I mean, Craig Richards, big up, you know, because every single stage on the last night was closed by a female artist. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Right? That's really, really cool. And the fact that you've thought about it is, you know, it means I know we're getting there as women, and I know there's a lot of angst and, you know, getting there quicker for younger people, but take your time. You know what I mean? You can't don't demand things. And I don't know, there's that new way of like speaking to promoters. Be polite, you know, and you know, do your thing with grace at the end of the day, you know. Don't be screaming and shouting around, you know. I know we want equality, but I don't want to be a guy. You know, I'm still a woman. I will always be a woman. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I mean, me and Kemi years ago, you know, when, you know, you had some dodgy gigs that maybe you weren't going to get paid from, and you kind of knew it when you went in the room that, oh, and people would say, no, the promoter's gone. You know, we've been left here on our own, you know what I mean? And we used to study other DJs and, you know, like, how angry can we get? You know, like, to get our money, you know. And sometimes Kemi would go, oh, I think we need to do a groove tonight, or we'll do a ramble tonight, you know what I mean? Because we'd watch them get angry, you know. We'd like, okay, that's how far you would go, because you didn't know as a woman how, you know, could you be like that? Could you swear at the promoter? Could you?
But then there's the added one, and I was speaking on my last podcast, I was talking to Charlie Bricks about this, like, it's okay for a man to get angry, or it's okay for a man to be make demands. They're being confident, but if you're a woman doing that, it comes with an extra load of, like, you know, you're then seen as a bitch or something like that.
That's the word that does come out a lot. Yeah. So, you know, my whole thing is to, like, just be polite, and nothing really truly can go wrong, you know what I mean? Unless you are, you know, there's, I think the Storm of, you know, Metalheadz and Kemistry and Storm of Metal, she was really tough and a fighter, and maybe didn't always fight the right battles. But I think you get older and wiser, and you decide when to choose your battles and which ones to stand up for and which ones to, like, here, you know. You know, like I say,
choose your battles.
Coming down from Laserdrome, I can remember these two guys going, oh my God, were you just the DJs? And we were like, yeah. They went, God, you're really good for women, you know. And
oh no,
women today would go, oh my God, it was really insulting. But me and Kemi were like, oh yeah, you're right. We are good for women, right? Because there's not a lot of us about. We didn't take that in a derogatory fashion. We just, and they weren't going, well, you're all right for women, you know. They were like, Julie, wow, you're quite good for women. It wasn't meant in any nasty way. It was almost curiosity. Okay, we haven't seen you before, and who are you? Do you know what I mean? And that's the way we took it, and rather than going, oh my God, did you hear what he said? You know what I mean? That's small stuff.
If someone, because of our generation, of that generation, of a new generation, was to say that now, then that would be incredibly offensive, I think. But yeah, I guess at the time, growing up through post-war Britain, it wasn't seen as an insult.
Well,
and it wasn't
like,
meant
oh, cool. You know, and we got to know those guys over the weeks, right? When we again, you know, oh, you're playing again tonight? Oh, wicked, what are you going to pull out tonight? You know, have you got drums? Because, you know, everybody knew drums took so long to come out, right? What was it, 4 years on dub plate? And there was only a few that's have it, and everywhere you go, people, you're going to play drums? We're like, yeah, don't worry, we've got it. I think we got our dub plate recut about 3 times of drums, you know what I mean? It was one of those tunes, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't really worry about stuff like that. And I mean, you know, again, going abroad and people kind of looking at Kemi the way she looked, you know what I mean? And Kemi always took that as curious rather than being racist or, you know. And I mean, if she had to stand up for herself, she would. But it didn't really happen very often. And I think because we were always I'm still now, you know, excited about everything. And I think we were very excited about our career. And we took it one step at a time, even though we thought ahead, don't get me wrong. Each gig was a new person, and you know, and I mean, we've met some fantastic people, you know what I mean, all over the world, you know. And I suppose Kemi didn't travel as much as I did, but she did get to go to Japan, and you know, and she got to go to New Zealand, and she got to go to Australia. I mean, even in Australia, you know, we couldn't stay in the hotel room there because they basically said we don't have her kind of people in here.
What?
And it was so funny because Kemi was doing a radio show at the time, and I said, "Oh yeah, they're not having you in here." And they were like, "Who?" Because we were supposed to check in at 5:15, and we got there at about 5. But there was a lot of people checking in front of us, and it was kind of for an Aborigine kind of conference they were all coming for. So anyway, they all got checked in. So by the time we got to the desk, it was 5:20, so they kind of had an excuse, like, well, you're supposed to be here at 5:15, and we were like, well, we were here, but we're British and we queue, right? We don't just, you were all busy, so wouldn't it not have been rude for us to come and I can see him looking at Kemi, and I'm not sussing it for a minute, right? And he said, well, oh no, your room's gone. So Tammy, who's the promoter, said, no, hang on a minute, you know, that's just not right, you know what I mean, and da-da-da-da. And he said, well, you know, we don't really have her kind here. And I said, what? I said, you need to get the manager out now. And he was like, it's right. I said, you know what? You need to say the word. I said, Kemi, they're not having you here. You look a bit strange. I think it's because I'm going to get to them to say the word. And he went, well, yeah, we don't really have black people in here. I said, right. And he said, but we can find you a hotel that does. And as he's saying this, the lady who's from the Aborigine conference was like, excuse me, we don't want to stay here either.
Whoa.
And there was about 30, 40 rooms they were checking into. He said, we'd rather go to the hotel that accepts her because we're here for an Aborigine conference. And we were like, right, okay.
Wow.
So we all went round to the hotel round the corner. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, like all of you then en masse.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. And you just, Kemi's on the radio and he's going, tell her to stop. I said, no, you just said it. Black people are not allowed to. I said, what's this hotel called? The Southern Cross. Let me give you the address, and she's
She's on the radio
but
as well.
even with that, it's a horrible thing to experience,
Wow.
right? But you just get over it and move on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not going to change the world. Felicity, who booked us in Adelaide, she made sure she got in touch with the Australian Tourist Board and reported them, and that all got sorted out. Do you know what I mean? So we did do something, but at the time we're like, you're almost incredulous that it's happening to you. And obviously I do see that as we travel the world. There's a difference in treatment sometimes, to your maybe your black MC that you're traveling with. You know what I mean? I think it's a hard thing, but you just kind of, again, even with that, you've just got to think, however we have to get in this country, as long as we get in, we're in. You know what I mean? There's nothing can do once we get in. Do you know what I mean? And we've used all kinds of tricks over the years. You know what I mean? So, and I think, again, it does help just to be, excited about, and I'm normally excited when I'm going to a new place, you know what I mean? And that's the way I come across, and even when...
And you've still got all of that excitement now. That's, I was going to kind of round up with that, like even after 30 years, you're listing tune names, on an incredible nerdy level, and you've still got that amazing excitement. And, there's a spark in your eye when you're talking about particular DJs and particular mixes. Even after 30 years, that hasn't gone. There's no jadedness.
I think if you don't have that, you shouldn't be doing it. If you don't have that love of it, and maybe I asked for a bit too much, maybe I asked for an ultimate love of it, but even at any level, you've got to do it with your heart and soul. You know what I mean? It can't just be, you've got to be there to move the crowd. Let's go on a journey together. Let's have an hour of Storm and let's go all together. Do you know what I mean? Let's have 4 hours of Storm and we'll go up and down for 4 hours together. You know what I mean? And I love that. You are the engineer, and it's like Goldie always says, arrangement is key. You know what I mean? And how you arrange your set is really the most important thing you will ever do as a DJ, to get them to go up and down, and then we'll have a bit of a breather. We're going a bit crazy. Let's chill it out. And, and that's how I see a set. And I see it all like a little roller coaster. You know what I mean? And then just throwing the colours and, you know what I mean? And throwing the shapes, and you're there.
Brilliant. Yeah. Amazing. Well, we've just been on a journey, I think, really. And that's been like, kind of 30 years of Storm all condensed down into an hour and a half. What have we been like? 2 hours. There we go.
Yeah, I can go on and on.
But no, it's been absolutely amazing. And what are your hopes now for 2023? What are there? Will you carry on celebrating then into?
Well, yeah, I definitely will. And and again, I'm it's been tough for clubs. It's been a really, really tough time for hospitality, and I say thanks to all the people that have booked me festivals and clubs in the last year, and and again to Lee Alchemy. He went through in COVID the cause. We did sitting down events, and still really lovely vibes from people. Drum and bass people were very well behaved, even though it's a very energetic music. I even had to kind of do all the hand jive business, what I mean? We had to get that going in some places, what I mean? Because obviously it's hard to sit down to drum and bass, but Lee stuck his neck out and did that, and props to him, what I mean? And so it's really nice. I mean, I've worked with Lee for years, through Stealth, Primal, all the things
I think
he's
you were
done.
it was one of his first ever nights, like as Stealth, I think, really, in Turnmills and stuff like that.
Great club, Turnmills, right? Oh, there's a restaurant, stop it. Yeah, but I mean, Lee's been out there and he's stuck his neck out, and you have to say respect to anybody, because I know what it's like to be a promoter.
Oh,
and
the most thankless task of all of the
roles That's what I say.
Play.
It's the hardest job in the world.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And obviously now we have to do all the social media things, and don't do too much but do enough, and oh god, it's confusing, and they get people on the, oh, you're not posting and you're not doing this, and you think, right, I've got to do that, and there's another piece involved with it. And as much as I know you have to do that, sometimes you think, gosh, it's a different kind of pressure now, you know what I mean, that you're kind of under. And I felt for clubs this year, you know what I mean, I've really felt, you know, they've, you know, well done to anyone who's put a night on in the last couple of years, because it's been a tough time out there, you
hugely know? And it's got to be for the love, really, even on a big level, because they're stuck in the middle, they're battling with agents, they're like trying to forecast the crowds, where crowds don't even know what they want to do anymore now, post lockdown and stuff. You know, there's a whole new generation who haven't just come straight from like being a teenager and into raving and stuff like that. There's been this strange gap, so there's this whole new language.
Well, I love that. In the last year, people have come up to me after I've played and said, well, what's your name? So I'm DJ Storm. They say, oh, you're DJ Storm. Oh, you played a great set. Thank you. You know, and that's, you know, it's starting all over again, and that's really nice. You know, you will get that roll over. You know, and I say to the older ones, I'm glad we play in the dark, right? You know, as we're getting older. Yeah, the daytime festivals, you're like, no, I want my set in the evening.
Brilliant. But then you don't, I mean, that's a level of excitement in itself then, because you're not looking forward to getting home and putting on your slippers or anything like that.
True.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Well,
Jayne.
thank you so much, Dave.
Real pleasure chatting to you and finding out more. And this could carry on again, so hopefully we will get to do another podcast or an interview.
Yeah, that would be great. And, you know, see you all down at Alchemy.
Yes,
23rd.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No, wicked. Thanks, Dave.
Cool.
Bye.